I'm Christy. Today I want to talk to you about how to figure out appropriate boundaries. So, as we continue moving forward and working to return to some semblance of normal life, I'm realizing more and more that that's not such an easy thing to do. So much is still unknown, up in the air, and sometimes even changing almost daily. How do you decide what's safe? Who to believe? In our area, we're currently under governor orders to mask up anytime we're inside a public building. Now, while enforcement of that varies, that's the basic premise, and cases are still relatively high in our city. In the past couple of months, I've had 3 friends impacted by COVID. A friend was in the hospital for several days. Another friend died after more than a month in the hospital. And yet another friend in another state also just died from COVID. Now, that's not just impacting them, that's their families and all their friends as well. And yet during our trip last month, we didn't have to mask up in any of the cities that we've stayed in. Now, we did have to mask up in national parks, or inside buildings in national parks. But masks were no longer required in the areas we were visiting. And I have to admit, it was kind of nice. Now, personally, while I hate to wear a mask while I'm working out in the gym, I can't say that it's the wrong thing to mask up inside public buildings. Yes, it's a nuisance. Yeah, masks are annoying. And yeah, I'm still vaccinated. But the Delta variant is attacking vaccinated people. Yes, the vaccination helps fight against the virus, and generally that means you get a milder case. But it's still nothing to mess around with. Now, I'm also considering the fact that I have at least 3 friends and family members who have developed long COVID. Now, one of them is still having symptoms and repercussions 18 months after she contracted COVID. This has just become too personal. I can't blow it off. So where does that leave me? Well, the short answer is in a quandary. On the one hand, I'm all for getting back to some semblance of normal life. For example, I've returned to my weekly Starbucks routine for distraction-free work time. It was an effective practice for me before COVID, and I'm enjoying getting back to it. We've also started eating out more. Now, while NJ still prefers us to bring food home, we are dragging him out more frequently. And fortunately, he doesn't fight it, and he enjoys the meals. Because we're vaccinated, we're less concerned about masking up. And depending on where we are, we don't always mask up in public. Now, I do generally have a mask on me if I'm inside a building. Again, preparing for all possibilities. Now, on the other hand, I find myself hesitant to venture too far from home. I want to travel again, but then I realize I need to consider who I'll be visiting on the other end. Is it a large group or a small group of people I'll be seeing? Have they been vaccinated or not? For example, I was considering an out-of-town trip for the sole purpose of being part of a large group. Now, when I talked to a friend who had recently been to a similar meeting with a similar set of friends, she said that the people at the meeting weren't masking up while they're inside, and she's in another high-case area. She also suspected that many of those in attendance weren't vaccinated. Now, I don't have a problem with them making the choice for themselves. However, I decided that it wasn't worth the effort for me to go out of town, risk exposure, and then bring that exposure back home. Yes, being vaccinated greatly reduces my risk, but it still isn't worth the risk to me personally. Again, it's a personal choice. So where does that leave us as we continue to muddle our way through this crazy pandemic? Well, here's a few thoughts. First, realize that people will each make their own decisions based on their own set of parameters. We may not agree with each other, and that's okay. We don't have to agree, but we do need to respect each other's decisions. That doesn't mean that I won't adjust my interactions accordingly. However, I will respect their right to choose and the decision they make. 2, understand that choices that you make may impact how other people choose to interact with you. Don't be offended. Understand that each of us is making the choices that we feel are best in our situation. And again, respect each other's right to choose for themselves. 3rd, don't be afraid to begin venturing out again. Depending on where you live and the risk in your area, this is easier in some areas than others. Regardless, though, as soon as you feel that it's relatively safe, begin doing things again. And don't be afraid to enjoy the low-risk outdoors. Finally, don't live in fear and paranoia. Now, this has almost become a mantra for me. I could so easily allow myself to venture down each what-if bunny trail. Instead, I choose not to go there. Yes, I acknowledge that the risks are out there. I evaluate them. I consider them. And then I make my educated decision and I move forward. And sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith, knowing that you've prepared the best you can and trust that it'll be enough. So my question for you this week is this: how are you choosing to return to some form of normal life? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can leave me a comment below, or you can leave me a comment over on the blog. That's at www.havenofhopeforme.com. This originally posted in September of 2021. I'm juggling things thoughtfully and carefully so that I can continue to say that life is good and there is never a dull moment.